Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Staccato HD P4.5. As you guys know, I did a full 2,000 round review on the HDP 4.0. This is the 4.5, 0.5 more, 4.5 inch gun. It is very similar, but not exactly the same, besides the obvious barrel length difference as the HD 4.0. The immediately noticeable thing for me was the safety paddles. They have a little bit more of an angle, or a little more smoother, a more rounder of an arc to them, and they sit a little bit closer to the frame because of that. Other than that, obviously the barrel length difference and the front sight island on the bull barrel is pretty much the same gun, uses the same mounting system. So for this 2,000 round review, which is actually a 3,000 round review, and I'll get to that, I didn't do any drop testing on it because it's the exact same HD footprint, and it's a really smart footprint that I hope Staccato will be incorporating into their other traditional 2011s. What are you getting if you're not familiar? Well, you're getting a 2011 gun that runs off of Glock magazines. It comes with Metgar 18 rounds. This is a Metgar 18 rounder that came with the gun that I've added a Springer +5 to. I like Springer Precision's or extended floor plates. They're +3s or +5s. I use +5s on pretty much anything that's going to be carried for open carry duty holster type stuff. I also like the fact that it's a metal magazine. It will run off of Glock magazines, which is something that I tested extensively throughout the review process, but I don't like Glock mags because they're polymer. And I know someone right now is like, actually they have metal inside. I know there's metal inside. I'm talking about the material that's on the outside that's increasing the friction between a polymer frame and a polymer magazine, or a polyamide of some kind, glass-filled nylon or whatever the actual material is. Metal drops free better out of a polymer type gun than polymer does. And if you take a look at how many other manufacturers use polymer mags, there's kind of a clue there. Yes, I understand there's metal inside the magazine. I don't care about that. I care about the friction between the mag and the mag well. So putting metal magazines inside a gun like this means they drop free very, very easily, although running it with Glock mags, they drop free okay. Generally because I'm running +5 floor plates, which is one of the reasons why I run them. Not just because of the extra ammo, but because the extra weight helps get the mag out of the gun. Just like the P4.0, we've got a steel frame that is a Series 80 gun accepting Glock magazines, and there is some unique features to the steel frame that you don't get from other 2011 or 2011 style guns. One of the big ones for me is an accessible thumb ledge, which is useful for my support hand in the event at distances or certain situations where I'm going to run a little bit faster splits. It's nice to have that additional ledge to put my thumb on to help keep or to get the muzzle back faster to reacquire my sight picture or put rounds down range. Some people, a big sticking point with this is the fact that the rear sights are forward of the optic. That's where they belong. If you're going to run a red dot on a handgun, that's the way it should be configured. Of course, in my personal opinion, the iron sights are there if you need them. Otherwise, they're out of the way. You can still get really good accuracy with that decreased sight radius. However, it's just preferential. And again, it is a preference, but this is not a gun you'd necessarily pick up if you're an iron sights only kind of guy. It probably wouldn't appeal to you so much in that regard. I ran an RMR HD, the HD1, throughout the review process. Now, normally I do a 2,000 round review process, but I generally, when I travel, I will take a 2011 as one of the guns with me when I travel, because I like to teach with the style of gun that is most prevalent in a class. So if I teach a class that's all Glocks, I'm going to run a Glock. If I've got some SIGs and some FNs and a smattering of guns, I may just grab one out of the box. But one of the things I'm seeing more and more commonly is 2011s or 2011 style guns on the range. So I took the 4.5 with me, and when I teach, if I teach a 3-day class, I'm going to shoot about 500 rounds during the course of the class to do demonstrations. I don't do a lot of fun shooting in classes, but I do a lot of demos because some things need to be demoed. So normally a 2,000 round review got turned into a 3,000 round review because I ended up teaching 2 classes with this gun. For me, the biggest difference between the 4.5 and the 4 is that extra 0.5, but also the additional weight of the front sight block, the flat wire recoil system. All of it is a perfect amalgamation that finally gives me a 4.5 inch gun that feels like a 5-inch gun. And I know that there are some people out there that are very, very analytically specific about their 2011s and their 1911s and their double stack 1911s who may disagree with that. but it's a little bit of subjectivity, but it's also something I can compare to my own data tracking. All of last year, I taught 90% of my classes with a 5-inch 2011 style gun. And this feels like that in regards to recoil management. Also compares very well to my reticle behavior and my splits on target at various distances for drills that I normally like to shoot. So I've got a gun that's a little bit shorter than 5 inches, which is kind of irrelevant for a duty carry consideration because my weapon light's already coming out that far anyway. For concealed carry, it might be a concern to have a shorter gun depending on how you carry. I get that. For me, it's all about how well the gun helps manage recoil. And this gun manages recoil, like I said, subjectively for me, like a 5-inch gun, but also objectively compared to my normal data tracking, I'm getting the same performance out of this as I do out of 5-inch guns as far as splits and consistent accuracy on the drills and targets and distances that I like to shoot. Now, another thing I got with my 4.5 was their magwell. I did not have every aftermarket floor plate +5 to use, but it works well with the Springer Precision. It also works with agency arms, it works with shield arms, and it works with Arredondo accessories. Those are the Glock extended floor plates I had for the review purpose. Those are also the only extended floor plates I trust for Glock magazines. I know that there's a lot of Terran Tactical and other brands that are out there. I either haven't tried them or don't use them because I've seen them not perform well either personally or in classes. So the ones that I listed are the ones that I trust. If you have a question about a specific brand, you can ask me in the comment section. I'm not going to do a whole tangent on which ones are good and which ones are bad other than what I've already tested or what I've said that I use. Reloads on this thing are fantastic with the addition of the magwell. Again, that's also a skill issue. One of the things that I don't particularly care for, and this is the 4 and the 4.5, is the magazine release. I wish it was a little bit more extended. Depending on your hand to grip size relationship, me being left-handed, I break my grip a little bit to use my index finger to drop mags, and I wish it stuck out a little bit more because I have to get super deep. Shooting right-handed, the thumb presses more against the grip than it does the mag release. And again, if your thumb's a little bit longer, you may not have this issue. But pressing with a thumb release, you might also have to roll your grip a little bit to get the bottom meat near the first joint there to actually get a clean release on that magazine. It may not be a big issue for you. It is something I identified, and a couple of students I let run this gun, kind of test drive it during classes, identified a similar issue based on their hand size, and I have about average size hands. So again, an aftermarket solution is going to be going to present itself, but out of the box, I wish that thing stuck up just a little bit further. It wouldn't necessarily interact with my grip or anything like that, but it'd make it a little bit easier to drop those mags. Another feature carrying over from the P4.0 HD is the ambi slide release, which is fantastic. I'm sure some people probably just had a collective heart attack or fell out of their chairs when I did that. Hold on, let me do it again. I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to keep doing it because it's fine. It really is. Oh, look, I did it again. Again, being left-handed, a little bit different for me, I use my index finger to easily manipulate, look, I did it again, to manipulate that slide release. You can get your thumb in there, but it makes some undue contact, some unnecessary contact with the safety lever. So if I'm coming in there to get it, I can get it. It's not a big deal. Look, did it again. And this one is easier to get to than the Staccato HD 4.0 because the safety lever sits out a little bit further from the frame. So it's a little bit harder to get in there and get it with this particular gun. Also, if you ride the thumb safety, like most 2011, 1911 shooters do, if your thumbs are long enough, you might be able to go over the top and get it, but I consciously have to press in on that, and I don't like that. For me, it wasn't a big deal because, like I said, I'm going to use my index finger to release that during my reload process. But if you want to use the ambi release, if you're left-handed, you can obviously use your index finger. If you're right-handed and you want to use your thumb, you probably may have to break your grip just a little bit to easily get in there. But you can use your index finger too. It's actually pretty cool. Now, throughout the 2,000 round review plus another 1,000 rounds, teaching 2 different classes with it, I'm running mostly the Metcar mags, but I also ran a lot of Glock OEM. I didn't run any Magpul magazines through it because I don't really use them very much. So it's all Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5 Glock magazines, and then the Metcar mags that come with it. Mostly with +5 expensions on it, but also some flush, some traditional 18, or in Glock's case, 17 round flush floor plate mags. The magwell didn't cause any issues there. The only potential issue you could have there running a flush magazine would be in the event of a malfunction, it might make it a little bit harder to strip, but that's pretty much the same across the board for all flared mag wells. Performance. I already talked about, and I'm going to hit it kind of hard right here, how it feels very similar to a 5-inch gun. The reason I bring that up is because the recoil on this thing is really soft on 115. I shoot primarily 124. It's noticeably soft on that too, but on the 115, it almost feels like the slide is dragging a little bit, depending on what 115 you shoot. So that could be a potential issue depending on what ammunition you're going to use. For this review, I was shooting 115 Blazer. I was also shooting 124 Blazer and 124 S&B, a 124 Gold Dot, plus some other defensive rounds such as Federal HST, Winchester Ranger, and Hornady Critical Duty. Defensive rounds fed fantastically, no issues there. I did my 0-0 confirmation with 124 grain gold dot like I always do. I also did my last round checks, which is something I usually don't throw on video. This is always something that's good to do on every gun, is I'll just take a magazine with one round in it, insert it, close the slide like that, and I'll go ahead and shoot that round, make sure the slide locks back reliably from 115 to 124 in defensive loads and across a bunch of different ammunition types. That is kind of a carryover test from 2011s with 2011 mags, because in the dark ages of 2011s, some of the mags just didn't work. Now, if you're competition minded, your mags may not lock the slide of the rear anyway, so this is a non-issue for you. But all of my reviews focuses on duty or self-defense carry use. Being a larger and a heavier gun, this wouldn't necessarily be something I would carry concealed, but it would be a potential contender for duty gun purposes, especially with the more reliable and less expensive magazine option. And there is a large gravitation in law enforcement right now that is pushing towards 2011 style guns, and this is definitely going to help support easing the minds of upper administration to make that transition, because we have a magazine commonality with the gun you're probably replacing. Of course, there is a word on accuracy. We'll show you guys real quick. Again, I didn't do any drop tests on this one because I did all the drop tests on the 4.0, HD 4.0, P4.0, and it's the same mounting system, so I didn't see any purpose in dropping this gun because it's exactly the same mounting system. So why test the same mounting system twice when I'm still testing it on the P4.0? But I will show you a 5-round group I fired at 25 yards, bag sported, 124 grain gold dot. That's kind of the accuracy I'd expect out of a Staccato. This is a higher priced gun. It is, to me, Staccato is the standard of 2011s. Arguably, there are guns that are objectively or subjectively better as far as how much artisan behavior and craftsmanship and completely 100% gunsmith assembled on a mink carpet versus complete factory 2011 or double stack 1911s, that you may get a good gun or you may get one that's just plagued with problems and you're going to have to put $600 worth of parts in it to get it to run right. So for me, Staccato has always been the bar. And the HD line, having checked out the 4.0 and now the P4.5, they're meeting their bar with a new type of gun. Some people have brought up the grip angle, the grip thickness, the lack of a grip safety. I don't personally care for grip safeties, especially on a Series 80 gun, because I can get higher on my grip, which I really appreciate. And if the safety features are not necessary, if I don't need that grip safety, then I want to get rid of it. So I prefer that. The trigger breaks, for me, they say between 4 and 4.5. On my trigger meter, I averaged out to 4.01 pounds. And I do my average on 10 pulls. Consistent. It is a nice trigger. Some people say that the Series 80 trigger has a lot more pre-travel or it feels more mushy than a Series 70, and they're right, but comparison is the thief of joy. So this is why I don't like doing comparison reviews unless it's relevant to what I'm talking about. The trigger on this thing has nothing to do with the fact that it's necessarily fed by Glock magazines. It's a different approach to a 2011 style gun, which feeds off of Glock pattern magazines because of cheaper magazines, potentially increased reliability, and a reduction in a possible failure point being the magazine, which is something that has plagued 2011s for a long time. You either have really good mags or you don't, and sometimes your really good mag becomes a really bad mag for no reason at all. It's like a computer. Sometimes it crashes and then you kind of clean it off and you put it back in the gun and it runs fine, and you have no idea why it did that. With Glock mags, this thing becomes boringly reliable. I had some weak ejection throughout the review, shooting 115. I talked a little bit about that, but I didn't have any malfunctions, either ammunition or magazine related, over the 3,000 rounds that I fired. That's pretty cool. My final thoughts on it are, and again, it's not a question I really care for, because it's something that people like to bring up, like trying to get a definitive opinion, but opinions vary depending on intent. So it's one of the questions that people will ask is like, well, if you could only have one. I hate that question, because only have one for what? If I had to choose, though, between the 4 and the 4.5, me personally, I'm going with the 4.5. If I was going to conceal carry it, I might choose the 4, but honestly, I'd probably just accept a slightly heavier gun and run this one, because it has a great collection of features with an addition of a slightly heavier gun, so I get the performance of the P4 and a slightly longer barrel, which helps me manage recoil a little bit better with the addition of that weight. I think the island barrel, or I should say the front sight island, that adds a little bit weight. Bull barrel, recoil factor, recoil spring weight, all of these things combined to give me a gun that tracks release flat compared to other guns of similar lengths. And to me, recoil behavior, split behavior, target behavior, tracking my own personal data, it performs as well as a 5-inch gun. So I got a slightly shorter gun with a slightly longer gun's performance, and I think that's pretty cool. Everything else is going to be, preference ultimately. And if you're in the market for a 2011 or a 2011 style gun, double stack 1911, something, whatever your terminology is going to be, because Staccato owns the 2011 term. But that means companies can't say it. You can. So everybody just calls them 2011s, even though there's only technically 2011s come from Staccato. But most of you guys know that. From a performance perspective, like I said, Staccato's kind of the bar. So this would be the gun to get if you're getting into 2011s, and you may just buy this and not go anywhere else. If you get addicted, like myself or some other people do, and you're always looking for fine-tuning of performance and applicability and possibility, you may end up buying a couple different guns. But just like me, I always end up coming back to Staccato because reliability is boring. And when you get a gun that's really reliable, you don't see a lot of differences in reliability from feature to feature, optic to optic, gun to gun. It's one of the reasons why in the polymer frame world, or Glock has always been so popular. It's a no-frills gun that's just going to work. And when you deviate too much from a recipe that's effective, you end up straying into guns that you have to make excuses for. And I don't think anybody's going to have to make any excuses for this. So if you're curious about the P4.5, just go ahead and get it. Till next time, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.